Hello. I am your host, Tracy Otsuka. Thank you so much for joining me here for another episode of ADHD for Smartass Women. You know that my purpose is always to show you who you are and then inspire you to be it. And in the thousands of ADHD women that I've had the privilege of meeting, I have never met a one that wasn't truly brilliant at something. So, of course, I am absolutely delighted to introduce you to Laura Key. Laura Key is a longtime editor and the host of the ADHD AHA podcast, which features heartfelt interviews and the unexpected, emotional, and even funny ways that ADHD symptoms surface. Laura leads content strategy at understood.org, an organization dedicated to helping people with learning and thinking differences like ADHD and dyslexia. Welcome, Laura. I am so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy. I'm so excited. I'm beaming over here. I'm not used to being on this side of the interview. This is exciting and a little bit nerve-wracking, honestly. But yeah.
Laura and I have recorded before, and I am blown away by her whole infrastructure. But we're going to talk about that. But before we go there, Laura, I've been podcasting for 5 years, right? I've never seen anything like it. Okay.
I'll tell the team. Okay.
So, on this podcast, I always want to talk about our guests' ADHD diagnoses first. And so I'm wondering if we can go there.
I would be happy to go there. That's what we talk about on ADHD AHA as well. So,
yeah.
But let me put on my I'm me cap for a minute and talk about my guest cap and talk about my ADHD diagnosis. So I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 30. I am in my early 40s now. So it's been, over a decade now that I've been diagnosed. Leading up to my diagnosis, when I was 28, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, right? And I had known for a while that I was struggling with something emotional related. And through therapy and eventually through taking anti-anxiety medications, I really started to get the hang of understanding what my baseline was and understanding who I am as a person who can regulate my emotions, understanding when am I actually anxious, when am I not anxious. And then in getting diagnosed with anxiety and being treated for it, I was able to finally start to notice, wait, something is still off. I'm struggling now with focus. Where did this come from? Was this here all along? Was I anxious because I was struggling with focus, or was I struggling with focus because I was anxious? Either way, I went to get it checked out, and I went to my psychiatrist and just started chatting about what I was noticing. And he asked me, when you're sitting at a coffee shop and writing, if you hear something across the room that kind of bothers you or annoys you or distracts you, do you feel like that's it? You're just totally done with your focus for that entire section of your day. And I was like, oh my God, how does he know this? That's so specific. And he said, let's get you evaluated for ADHD.
So when he said that, what was your first thought?
My first thought was, there's no way.
Yeah.
Right?
And why was that your first thought?
Because, and I'm sure we'll get into this, I think we want to talk about perfectionism maybe a bit on this show, on this episode, Tracy. On paper, everything was great.
Yeah.
My whole life, straight A student, star athlete, thriving, or so I thought, in my job. I know everybody, especially a lot of women, say this, but I wasn't that typical hyperactive boy that we see on TV shows. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that was my impression of what ADHD was. So I was like, no way. This isn't me. And so after that, Tracy, I still didn't believe it for a while, and I got a second opinion. Same diagnosis, different psychiatrist.
Uh-huh.
And even after all that, and I talk about aha moments a lot on my show, I had this diagnosis, and I didn't really grasp what it meant for me. And then one day, I went back to my childhood home, and I had my aha moment. So my aha moment wasn't my diagnosis. It was, I was at home visiting my family in Ohio. And I started to go through my old journals from when I was in middle school and high school. Wow. And in going through my journals, I stopped and I just gasped. Tracy, I'm not kidding you. I was blown away because all over these pages was scribbled in different sizes the word focus. Because I could not focus growing up. And I was like, holy crap, this has been an issue for a really long time. I started crying, and that was it for me. I was like, okay, this is a big deal. This is a big thing in my life.
Okay, so if we take Laura back to her childhood, if someone was looking in, how would they have described you?
Oh, I'm going to use some of the very gendered adjectives that people often use to describe women with ADHD. Sensitive, overly emotional, perfectionistic. What else? I think those would be the big ones. And seems to be on top of it all. Wow, this girl can do anything. And that's where kind of the rub was.
So you knew everybody thought that about you, and you were driven to make sure that happened, but at the expense of what?
At the expense of so much, Tracy. I mean, the amount of burnout that I felt as like a 12, 14, 16-year-old girl, I look back and I think, how did I survive that? It felt, looking back, I can remember, I get this pit in my stomach of the feeling of insurmountability. I know that's not a word, but we're going to make it a word today. Yeah. That I experienced. I mean, I remember one time, Tracy, I was on, varsity basketball and volleyball teams. And before starting, for instance, the varsity basketball game, the varsity team was expected to be in the crowd cheering for the JV team. And I was there, but I was doing my calculus homework and I was doing my physics homework. And I remember that my coach yelled at me because I needed to be there as a leader of this team, focused. I have to do my homework. I can't wait to do my homework. So that's like that in a nutshell is just who I was all the time.
So were you really chatty or were you more internal?
A little bit of both. So when I'm around people, I'm very extroverted. I love talking to people. I love getting to know people. I would definitely interrupt people a lot. But then when I would be in my own space, I would get home and it's like do not disturb sign. I need to be totally in my space, totally introverted, because it's exhausting putting yourself out there. And even now, Tracy, you're so engaging. You're wonderful to talk to. And I'm like, I don't want to miss a word that Tracy says. I want to make sure she knows that I value this time with her and that I'm engaging with her. I don't actually feel that way with you, but I'm just illustrating a point here.
Yeah, absolutely. So were you diagnosed with combined type?
Yes.
Okay. You graduate from high school. Obviously, you do really well. You go off to college. What happened there, and what were you studying?
In college, I studied journalism. Thank you for asking.
So you were good at journalism. You were studying what you were interested in, what you're good at.
You remember those journals. I love to write. I love the written word, but, it was slightly masochistic in a way because I had so much trouble focusing enough to get my thoughts down. Right.
Totally. Writing is the hardest thing for me.
Yes. This is why I'm an editor now and not a writer anymore. Tracy.
I say that all the time, Laura. I say, Dorothy Parker, I hate writing. I love to have written. So
Yes, totally.
I'm an awful writer, but I am the best editor.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Especially other people's work. So you go to college and you're clearly in a field that you excel in. How are you doing there? Or is it still a lot of perfectionism and having to, everything needs to be perfect?
Yes. And I remember one time, this sounds braggy, but we're trying to paint a picture here, right?
Yeah.
I was, your freshman year, you take all these really like 101 courses, big class. I was taking, Psych 101. And it was a seminar. There were 300 kids or so young adults in this course.
Kids.
And kids, right? Let's be serious. And I remember being at the cafeteria at lunch after one of the classes, and we had just gotten some test results in from the course. And I was sitting with some people who were also in the course, and like, man, who is this person who set the curve at 96? And I just shrunk into my seat. I was like, I don't know. Hate them. It was me.
I was doing the opposite. I was lying about my grades.
Yeah.
You were like hiding. Granted, I was in calculus and biochem and So,
But Tracy, the thing is like I know a lot of people, women with ADHD are gifted as well. I'm not gifted academically. I just burned myself out with everything from rote memorization to just learning as much as I could. I lived in the library.
see, I think that all ADHD women are gifted in their area of interest. I think that's what ADHD is. I mean, if you really think about intelligence, and I know we measure it by IQ, which I think is all wrong. For me, it's really about curiosity, right? People that are curious are the people who are constantly asking for more. And why? Why does it have to be that way? Can it be this? I mean, they are annoying in class, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you did not have a problem in college. It wasn't like you, like many of us, where you get to college and now you're competing at an even higher level and you were barely hanging on before. You were fine because you were in an area of interest. You were in the right major.
Right. Right. That's correct. But I would say that where I was struggling was outside of class.
In what way?
I think I think I was pretty impulsive. Right? I was balancing out the intense structure of the academic rigor that I was trying to project and wanting to succeed. And I made a lot of bad choices, a lot of which I don't really care to talk about here. But I made a lot of, I'd say, risky choices. And we know that people with ADHD can, they're more prone to engage in risky behavior. And I just never felt like myself, I think is a way to put it. I would hop from friend group to friend group, trying on different trends. I had my punk group, I had my hippie group, I had my typical college dudes and dudettes group. I never really felt home with any one group. And so I started to spread myself thin across relationships and then also get extra internal when I was on my own, spending a lot of time alone and just reflecting and feeling really depressed and anxious.
Regroup, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you said you've never felt home with any one group. Did you ever feel home with any one person?
Well, my husband, absolutely.
Did you meet him in college?
No, I didn't. I mean, that came much, much later. But
no, but I'm talking about in college. Or did you just feel disconnected?
I mean, I had great friends. I'm not trying to be shady about any of my friends. They were wonderful. Something just always felt off. And that wasn't about them. That was about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can kind of relate to what you're saying. You're doing all the right things. You're hanging out with your friends. You're doing what, college kids are supposed to do. But you just felt like there's just something more. And so I'm curious if it was always there's something better. There's more achievement. There's the next step. And this is just kind of a holding pen until you get there. And that includes friends and everything.
A little bit of that, yeah. And this is something I still am coping with, Tracy, and maybe I'll cope with my entire life, is not so much like a next level of achievement, but a deeper understanding of self is, I think, what I was craving. And this, like, if only I could be a little bit more relaxed, how much better would my life be? If only I could be more present in the moment, how much better would my life be? And those thoughts really started to percolate in college. And it was really painful at times. I didn't have awareness of what I was struggling with because I wasn't diagnosed yet.
Right.
And so I just was kind of flailing,
Because you could tell that you were different than all your friends.
Yeah.
Or most of them, probably.
Most of them, yeah. I'm sure there's a certain percentage of them that, I probably...
Okay, so then you graduate from college. I'm assuming you graduate with honors. The world is your oyster. No?
Yes.
No? Yeah.
Yes. I graduated summa cum laude, and then I was like, what should I do now? I should go study somewhere else again and push myself again.
There's always more.
What did I do, Tracy? Then I got a scholarship to graduate school in Boulder, Colorado. Beautiful, beautiful place, to get my master's in Spanish literature. So let's do this all again in my second language, in something that's not my native language.
And what made you decide on Spanish literature?
I had studied abroad in Mexico when I was in college, and I actually got a double degree in journalism and Spanish.
Okay.
So I
You were
wanted to.
fluent.
Yes, I was fluent in. I've lost it. My husband is French, so now I've lost all of my Spanish. But yeah, I moved on to graduate school, which was even harder, and the pushing myself and the burnout got even worse. I was one of only a handful of native English speakers in this program, and it was really intimidating.
And so
So,
did the
yeah.
perfectionism get even worse there because all of a sudden everything was so much harder?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I was completely on my own. Now I moved out there all by myself. I barely knew anybody. I made one really great friend. Shout out to Dana, if you're out there listening, in graduate school, who I don't know what I would have done without her. And then another great, great friend, my friend Tracy, another Tracy. So I had two really great friends who were my rocks when I was there. But when I first arrived, I knew nobody. And so I didn't really have a support system. And I just kept going into the mountains and just sitting there looking around like, shouldn't I be having some big life realization or something?
But you knew that you needed to.
I know.
So I'm curious. So you're studying Spanish literature, it's all in Spanish. Things are much harder. What did your studying look like? Was it insane as far as how you prepared yourself for all of it?
It was wild. I mean, my entire apartment was just covered in books and post-it notes, and I looked like I was planning a coup or something, the way that everything was laid out in my apartment.
One of those serial killer, when they investigate that.
I wasn't going to say it. Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, a lot of that, a lot of living in the library, a lot of, work hard and then play really hard, play too hard.
Uh-huh.
So that was,
My
yeah.
daughter went to a top, I think top 33 school in the country for high school. And the head of schools, I think that's what they called him. She was on a scholarship. She is a jazz singer. He made a comment to us because these were all like, the best kids, meaning the best kids academically, right? They were able to get those grades. And he said the thing about those kids is as hard as they work, they play even harder, which was really shocking to me because I just assumed those kind of kids are, the really quote unquote good kids who all they do is the right thing, but no. So
No.
it was those kids that the top of the class that he was most worried about when it came to, addiction issues, drugs,
Yeah.
alcohol, all of that.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. It's like a release valve and not a healthy one, but it is a release valve. Yeah.
So you said that you finally got diagnosed in your late 20s with anxiety.
That's right.
They put you on medication, and the medication allowed your brain or your nervous system to regulate enough so then you could kind of see the big picture more, right?
That's
what
right,
was really
yeah.
going on. And I'm curious what led to that.
It actually was, I had been in a long-term relationship, and it was a very, very bad breakup, and which is a shame because he was such a wonderful person, but it's a tumultuous time in our lives, right? And the badness of this breakup led me to therapy.
Ah, okay.
And that
It's
was
common.
so common. Yeah.
Yeah.
And very grateful for that. And then the therapy led to anxiety diagnosis, and the therapy was very helpful. And then the medication, which I resisted for so long, Tracy, I resisted for years because that would be cheating, right?
Oh my gosh, totally. Totally. And there must be a way, right?
Yeah,
Everybody
I
else
must
can
be
do
able
it.
to handle this on
Yeah.
my own. I'm from the Midwest. I can handle anything.
Right.
I'm from the Midwest and I moved to the big city. I'm in New York. I've got this.
Yeah.
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 What you're saying is this is what led to the beginning of really understanding who you were, who you are, and what you need in your life to make it all work. And so I'm curious, what was that thing? What was the problem then versus when everything started to work out? Was it environment? Was it, and when I say environment, I'm not just talking about physical environment, I'm talking about like people environment. Was it understanding yourself? Like, what was it that kind of just switched everything on and you started to realize that you could do this?
Well, I mean, just having a diagnosis or a name for the challenges, of course, is helpful, right? Because it makes you feel like, oh, I'm not just defective. This is something that is out of my control, and I can use tools to feel better, essentially, to cope better. ADHD medication, when I eventually went on that, was very, very helpful for me. I remember when I found the right medication and I started, taking it, I just feel regular. Is this what regular feels like? Yeah.
How long did it take you to get the right medication?
I think about a year of trial and error. Yeah.
And so you had to go through a number of different medications to get there?
I did. Yeah, I did.
And that was, I assume, because of the anxiety.
Yeah, there was a lot of balancing out how things work together, and then side effects and whatnot. And I didn't want to feel not like myself.
Right.
Right. That was really important to me. And so the perfectionist in me, Tracy, I'm like this. I want to feel perfect. I want the medication dosage to be perfect. Yeah.
So Laura, I tried for 2 years and I could not find a medication that didn't ratchet up the anxiety. It would just make it worse. And, they would try to put me on anxiety medication at the same time that they would put me on some sort of stimulant medication. And it never worked. So I'm curious, what combination, if it is a combination, are you on?
Yeah, I do. I take a combination of anti-anxiety medication, like a 20 milligram dosage, alongside with a stimulant medication that's long form release. So like the lowest. No, I take Concerta actually.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's an 18 milligram, steady, slow release throughout the day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I just thought that that's what Vyvanse and Concerta do. That's why I think they're prescribed to a lot of adults, and because it is this slow action, or slow release.
I don't know actually, but I know that it works for me.
No, that's so wonderful. And so then, do you take it every day, or do you take it when you really know that there's something that you struggle to do?
I take it almost every day.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
I need to.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
It really does. On the days that I don't take it, if I don't take it, it's typically because I'm already out of whack anyway. Maybe I'm jet lagged or something like that, or it's a weekend and I just forgot to take it or something. So it's not that big of a deal if I don't take it. But even still, my anxiety is higher when I don't take it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with the anxiety medication. You can continue taking the anxiety medication, but if you don't have the stimulant with it, higher anxiety.
That's right. Yeah.
So do you think that ADHD caused your anxiety? Or do you think that you always had anxiety? It's definitely comorbid, but it's so much better once you're treated for the ADHD.
I think I definitely have comorbid. I know that I definitely have comorbid anxiety and ADHD, but the ADHD absolutely exacerbates it without a doubt. Because what I mentioned earlier, it's when I'm having trouble focusing, then I feel really anxious and I get really in my head and I ruminate more. Yeah. And I feel like, so it's this vicious circle. It's so hard to untangle.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Absolutely. And ultimately, I think it's all related, right?
Oh, absolutely.
However we want to label it, because in truth, Laura, I have never, after thousands of ADHD women, I've never met an ADHD woman who doesn't have some anxiety.
Absolutely. And with the executive functioning issues, mental health challenges just hit differently, right? Yeah. So you've got emotional regulation challenges are baked in to ADHD, which so many people don't realize.
Yeah. Today I was a little bit late getting ready. I'm leaving for New York this afternoon. And so I'm just kind of, and I've got a bunch of podcasts. And I realized as I was sitting in the mirror trying to get my makeup done or my hair, I don't know what it was. I only had a certain amount of time. And all of a sudden I got all this anxiety. It was ridiculous. And I still feel it in my body just because I was so worried that I was going to be late. Mm. And I didn't have time to tap, which really helps me to, regulate my nervous system. I was just, obviously I've been knowing about all this for a decade, but it really hit me how it really affects me when I think I'm going to be late. Like stresses me out. And it doesn't really matter who I'm late for, just the fact that I'm going to be late. And I was thinking, okay, you just need to be early all the time because you are creating this dysregulation in your nervous system because you just get so anxious about it.
Totally relate to that. Yep. Yeah. What is it though? I'm thinking about this for myself too, because I am so exactly the same. Like anything, it doesn't matter if I have a big meeting or if I'm just, dropping the kids during like a flexible time period. I always feel this way. For me, I've been reflecting on that a lot lately. Like, why do I get so worked up when I'm about to be late? Nobody cares but me, right? There are only a few instances when anyone else actually cares. And I think it's this feeling that if I'm not early or exactly on time, then it will just be a cascading challenge throughout the entire day, that everything will be off and my entire routine will be off its course. I try to put so many like systems in place to help me.
So is that really, I'm failing, my systems are failing?
Yeah.
Because I think for me, it is about disappointing other people, but also how I will look. I will look unprofessional.
Got it.
I think so. Okay, so let's talk about this perfectionism thing. Everybody thinks that, oh, well, if you have ADHD, you're a disaster. Your house is a disaster. Your car's a disaster. You're brilliant. You've got all these thoughts, but you just really don't have it together.
Right. You're a hot mess, right?
Yes, exactly. And what I have been, arguing for the last, I don't know, since I've been doing this is, okay, that's what one type of ADHD looks like. But there are those of us with ADHD, especially women, who are outwardly, like what people see is so successful, so together, so on top of it. If you are going to give someone something to do, you want to give it to that person because they are never going to disappoint.
Right. And they're going to spin themselves in circles in the background to make sure they get it done. Yeah.
Exactly. And they may think, oh, well, she can do it. Like they just see you as so competent and that this is easy for you.
Right.
And they don't see what goes on behind the scenes to make sure that this happens. And then we also tend to have this problem where we say yes instead of no. So I'd love to talk to you about your perfectionism and how that shows up. And then what are you doing to try to be aware of when you're getting into perfectionism, how it affects you? Like, why do you not want to be like that? Because, so my motto used to be, good enough isn't. Right? So now I'm like, good enough is, right? But
it's very like Yoda-esque as well in the sentence construction. I like that.
They just roll their eyes, and of course it was around the things that I really cared about. There were certain things I could give a crap, right? And the things I could give a crap, I really could give a crap. But the things I really cared about, insane. The level that I would go to making it perfect. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking. I want to hear what your perfectionism looks like.
I will have two different scenarios. I have a work scenario and a home life scenario. Okay. So, because they're different, right? So at work, my perfectionism, and it's just like anxiety obviously is a piece of the perfectionism. For me at work, I will get stuck on really minute things. I'm at a level at my organization, for instance, where I have to make a lot of decks that explain, PowerPoint slides, PowerPoint presentations to explain strategy and vision. And I work with so many brilliant people who are so good at telling a story through something like that. Yeah. I'm great at telling a story. But there's something that happens, Tracy, between the story that I've written on a piece of paper or that's in my head and then translating that into a deck presentation form where I lose my mind. But this is the Dorothy Parker thing, though. I love to have created it because I'm so happy. Yeah. And I will focus I've lost myself for hours and hours on a single slide trying to figure out like if one font, not one font, if like what should the heading be on this slide, or what color should this Venn diagram be on this slide. And I get so lost in it. It's so, so frustrating. And then I'm out of time. And then I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I worry about a very real thing. I'm like, well, people think that I just don't have ideas because I got so focused on this one little thing. And now I don't have anything to show. And I always end up pulling through and like having something. But one reason that I always pull through is that I'm fortunate at my job and just in life at this point. I surround myself with colleagues who understand and we complement each other. Yeah. And so I have some folks who are really good at pulling that story out of me.
Yeah.
And
helping me process
and helping me like literally put it on these slides. It seems like such a small example, but it is so big in my head because ultimately you talked about failure before. If I don't express this idea in the format that is clearest to other people and in a way that shows the brilliance of this idea, people will think that I'm a fraud.
Yes. Yes. And that is even after going through
Yes.
the whole education system and always being the best at everything. I don't know what happened when you studied Spanish literature, if you ended up, rising to the top. But can you imagine what an ADHD woman would feel like who has struggled in school from, let's say she also has dyslexia, struggled in school from second grade?
I can't even imagine. I mean, like the level of anxiousness and tied in knotsedness, right?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
That must be.
Yeah, like
right.
I'm not good. I'm not smart. I can't do this.
Right.
Everybody else knows more than I do. And I mean, clearly you had all of kudos, right? As you went through, she's smart, she's brilliant, she's this, all
right.
those positive messages. And you're still feeding yourself negative
messages.
Yeah.
And I would say that all the positive messages it was almost detrimental in some ways because the imposter syndrome just up.
Trying to reach that.
Yeah.
Every time.
And yeah, I'm grateful. I work at an organization that focuses on ADHD and dyslexia. So people understand and they will, we support each other, but not everybody has that.
Absolutely not. So, okay, that's how perfectionism would show up at work, an example. Now, what about at home?
So at home,
I have kids, right?
I have two kids. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. I love them so much. And I know my little babies who now don't feel like babies anymore.
Babies.
And I have a wonderful partner, my husband, who gets me, and just we talked when you and I chatted for my show, Tracy, about the importance of finding someone who gets you and compliments you. Compliment with an E, not an I, but also with an I.
Right.
Both. So the perfectionism at home is usually around the house. What's happening in the house. Mm-hmm. And I am not someone who deep cleans, but I will destroy any clutter. I will get it out of the way. And I struggle so much with like visual clutter that it can drive some people crazy, right? That's just one example. It's not really my best example.
People think if you have ADHD, it means everything is a disaster. And
right.
Again, there is a group of women who that is far from the truth. And I am exactly like you. I call it visual pollution. If there is any visual clutter anywhere around me, I can't focus on anything but that mess. I've got to go clean it up. And sometimes that might mean sticking it in a cabinet and just shoving it in there, but at least I don't have to see it.
I'm not going to let you see the rest of this room right now, Tracy. You see the nice wallpaper and everything. Yeah.
But then that also bothers me because in my head, it's like, well, behind that's just a big mess and I've got to clean that up. And and it goes on for months.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can drive people crazy because I get obsessive over it. And it's like I use that almost as an outlet for all of the things that feel messy in my brain. Right.
Totally.
So, right. I'm like,
but I really think there is something to that, don't you? I mean, if your brain is constantly like, it's just always cluttered, there's always all these thoughts, and then your environment is like that too. Where do you go to calm your nervous system?
And my kids are at an age right now where it's just activity after activity after activity. And my husband, I mean, he's amazing, but something about being a woman, the female caregiver, you are carrying that. It's that, what is that? The emotional burden, or
Yeah.
you're
Emotional
carrying
labor. Yeah.
emotional you're
Physical
carrying
labor.
around.
Project manager.
Project manager.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my
That's
husband
really
always says, my husband is great. He'll say, just direct me to what you need me to do right now. But I'm like, I don't want to have to think about it.
You figure it out. Exactly.
Like, thank you for providing the actual labor, but
Because for us, I think what's even worse than that is the thinking through all the scenarios, right? And getting lost there rather than, okay, you tell me what to do and I'll go do it. That's easier for me.
Right, right. And my husband and I have had a lot of conversations about this recently, and we've started to get much better about divvying up the planning as opposed to just the work itself.
Yes.
Which has been so helpful. My kids' birthdays are 1 week apart. I know. And now that they're a little bit older, they both want separate birthday parties. Mm-hmm. So I told my husband, I'm not planning both parties. I will plan one, you plan the other. And,
Yeah.
I mean, that made a big difference.
So that's my area of interest. Oh my God. Like, that is where the perfectionism, it was insane. The parties my kids had. We didn't buy them a lot of stuff, you know? I believe in travel and taking them places and experiences. And so for me, it was the birthday parties.
Yeah.
But now it's like, I don't want to entertain. I don't want to have people over because with a birthday party, it's so creative. But that was my area of interest. It sounds like it was not yours.
No, I'm waiting for we're back to back throughout April and May with events, and I just can't wait for that to be over so I can lay on a hammock on a weekend.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, that is the one thing that my kids remember. There's a lot that as they go through childhood, they forget, but they remember the birthday parties. So, hey, I did something right. Okay.
I'm sure you did a lot more than that, right?
Let's talk about what you do. What are your strategies when you start? First of all, you're aware that, okay, this is what's going on. It's these perfectionistic tendencies. What do you do?
So what do I do? One thing I really struggle with, Tracy, is prioritization. Mm-hmm. So, and this will get to the thing that I do. Everything, different grain sizes of priorities and responsibilities are floating around, not just in my head, but I'll create these calendar invites for myself. That's just a run-on sentence of everything from buy eggs to don't forget to plan a graduation party 10 years from now. I'm exexaggerating, but you understand.
Wait. You put it in a calendar invite?
This is not what I'm recommending. I'm going to get to what I'm recommending.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even think that was possible.
I am illustrating the wildness of my brain when I'm trying to think through the different things I have to do and what overwhelms me.
So,
right?
Laura, are you one of those unusual ADHD animals who actually can do time blocking? Like you can literally block out your whole calendar a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. I tend to be pretty good at that. It's a strategy I learned as a kid too. Before I knew I had ADHD, I would give myself fake deadlines so that I would get everything done early.
Would you forget that it was fake?
That I managed to convince myself that it wasn't
real.
Fake, that it was real.
Because I could do that because my working memory is so bad, I would forget what the real deadline was.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
So that worked to my advantage.
Okay.
So now what I've been doing, and it seems so simple because this whole like throwing 80 million things into one calendar invite is just ridiculous and stressful. Yeah. When I start to get really, really overwhelmed and the thoughts just won't stop, I get out a piece of paper and I have to write by hand because there's something soothing about that. And I just write every single thing down. And then I start to put them in categories. And then I strategize with my husband and we figure it out together. And I have to warn him. I say, I'm in one of my overwhelmed spaces right now and I need you to sit down with me so that I can get out of this. So let's do this together. And that's been really, really helpful these last few years for me.
And it works every time, right?
It does. It's like you have to get everything out of your brain and look at it on a piece of paper. And then you can say, oh, this isn't so bad. Or, oh, this is a lot. I need help.
Yeah. Or, oh, I can give these to you.
Yeah. Take this. You clean out the garage. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So that's really helpful, and it's the exact same thing that I do. I just do it all on little post-it notes, and I just like stack them all over the wall, and then I'll organize them by, okay, what needs to be done first, second, and third. And then I make a point of every time that I finish something, the post-it note goes to the other side of my desk. And so then I have, like yesterday, because I had so
Wow.
much to do to get ready to get out of here, I had a stack of post-it notes this big, and that feels so good.
Wow. So that would totally overwhelm me. I'm impressed that you're able to do that. The post-it notes, they carry a little bit of trauma. I told you about the coup that I was staging
Oh,
when I was getting my master's degree, the post-it notes everywhere.
oh my gosh. Well, you know what it is? It's that I can move them. And I have spatial issues. And so if I were to write, and I'm very visual, so the way that I remember things is everything is visual. You know, like I draw characters and I tie everything together, probably like your serial killer analogy. That actually works for my brain. But when
I hope that that's not what comes out of this.
when I go to put it on a piece of paper and I can't move it, there's never enough space. So this way I can move things around, and that makes me feel less stressed. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, totally. I love that.
You meet one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD, right? We all
That's
have these
right.
different strategies, and what works for one doesn't work for another.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to know, how did you start
AHA.
AHA? Walk us through, like, how did that happen? You were diagnosed, you said early 30s, right? And then what came from there?
Well, what came from there was about almost a decade of me not really talking about my diagnosis with anybody other than my family and my closest friends. And I try to unpack that sometimes. I don't know what it was, why I didn't speak about it more often. Maybe it was stigma, self-stigma. I don't know. But
You felt shame. You didn't want anybody to know.
yeah, I think I didn't want anybody to know, which is wild because I work at an organization that is all about promoting advocacy in people with ADHD and dyslexia, self-advocacy.
This was
My col-
after.
Yeah, my colleagues have pretty much always known. It's just not something that like I really spoke a lot about. So it wasn't a secret. I just wasn't loud about it. I think I maybe felt like my struggles weren't important enough, right? Like it wasn't like I'm so privileged in so many ways. You know, I'm so fortunate in so many
Yes.
ways. Yeah.
Because you've been so classically, traditionally successful.
Yeah, I
And
think
so
that was
who
it.
am I to be talking about any problems I might have had or I
Exactly.
might have now? I totally understand that. And that would explain the double diagnosis. I've gone 3 times. Because it's always,
Yeah.
well, wait, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like you said, then you go back to your childhood and yeah, clearly it is. It's just different, you know?
It's just different. Yeah. So eventually, and in working at Understood, because ADHD AHA is part of a network of shows,
Right.
the Understood podcast network. And
I didn't know that, Laura.
we have 5 shows and soon to have more shows, Tracy.
Are they all about, mental health and neurodivergence? What are they about?
They're all about learning and thinking differences, ADHD, dyslexia, yes, neurodivergence. Some are aimed at parents, strategies for parents, managing, helping their kids cope with challenge, navigating special education system. We have talk podcasts, we have explainer podcasts. My show in particular is a storytelling show, as you mentioned at the top. But we were talking at our organization about how ADHD symptoms are, when you look at them on a list of a piece of paper, especially as a woman, right, it just doesn't really, it's like, well, this is just stuff that everybody struggles with, right?
Yeah.
How's anybody supposed to know if they might have ADHD? And we had already had one podcast that was successful. It's called In It. It's an interview show where my fabulous colleagues Gretchen Vierstra and Rachel Bozak, they interview parents and experts about coping with kids' challenges. And I thought, we need to find a way to bring more human context to symptoms, to ADHD symptoms. And let's figure out, when did people realize that they might have ADHD? Like, what was the tipping point moment? And obviously it's a cumulative, like, slow burn for a lot of people. But I've noticed that, and I noticed this before we launched the show, like, most people I talked to, they had a moment that really stuck out for them. And so we thought, I want to talk to people about those moments and find out, what was going on in your life when you thought you might have ADHD, or when you realized it was such a big deal, like me with my journals, right? When I looked back. And so we launched a show, ADHD AHA, in the hopes of helping people bring humanity to symptoms that they may be experiencing, and realize that they're not alone and that they have community.
And how long has this show been going on?
We launched it in 2022. It's been performing really well, Tracy. I'm really excited. We get so many unsolicited emails from our listeners who, and I'm sure you experienced this too, I imagine it motivates you to keep doing what you're doing.
It's the only reason.
Right? Because it's hard work. It's hard work. But I mean, people saying, I listened to this and the way that so-and-so talked about how they struggle with such and such, I finally got it. And then we see that people are having their own aha moments by hearing these stories.
Absolutely.
So it's been really thrilling. I was so quiet about my diagnosis for so long. I never in a million years expected that I'd be hosting a podcast about it.
Yeah. Okay, so what has been the biggest impact for you in hosting a show like this?
The biggest impact for me, well, I learned so much, number one, from everybody I speak with. Every time I speak with someone, it chips away at my own personal shame and imposter syndrome a little bit, like little by little. And meet as you know, so many smart, brilliant people.
They're all.
Yeah. So I think that's really been the biggest gift to me, is just getting to relate to people, on a weekly, well, it comes out bi-weekly, but whenever I interview people basis.
Yeah.
And just, remember that I'm not alone, that there are other people out there.
Well, it was a privilege to be on your podcast, but I did say that I was going to allude to, I have never been, in 5 years, I have never been on a podcast with that many people and that level of perfectionism. Like, I have been interviewed on national TV and I've not experienced that. And I left and I thought, oh my gosh, she is a perfectionist.
I am. I have to say, Tracy, too, that in the case of your interview, that wasn't all me, though. It's because you are a VIP. And we wanted everything. I'm not trying to embarrass you, but you are. We wanted to make sure that everything was just right for your very special appearance on ADHD AHA.
I hope I did good enough for all of that hoopla.
You did. You were amazing, as always.
So I want to know what you think the key to living successfully with ADHD is.
Asking for help.
Oh my gosh, that's a brilliant one.
Yeah, but not being afraid to ask for help, right? Yeah.
I think in 5 years, you're the first person who's said that. I
mean,
we talk about it, but for that question, I think you're the first person that said that. And I absolutely agree. And I think especially with women, we feel like your thought of I'm cheating, that's exactly what's in my brain. Asking for help means I'm cheating. Because as women, neurodivergent or not, we're supposed to do everything, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And asking for help is not something that ever crossed my mind until once I got acclimated with my diagnosis. It took a really long time to ask for any help. So it feels like a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite thing when I have a to-do list is, okay, who can I give this to?
Yeah.
How can I get it done?
And not have delegator.
To do it.
Yeah.
And then some of the things that stay on the to-do list, and you're kind of beating yourself up about, why didn't I do that? I didn't do that. I didn't, And then something, you get an email and you're told, oh, that's already been done, or we don't need that anymore, or, it's changed. And I'm just like, yes, check. I love that.
If you just wait long enough, eventually it will be taken care of. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Someone else is going to take care of it. So, what is your number one ADHD workaround, Laura?
Oh, my number one ADHD workaround. Well, getting everything out of my head and onto one single piece of paper, for sure. And one thing that we haven't touched on, which, it used to be something I did to mask, but now actually is just really something I enjoy. I don't know if it's so much of a workaround, but I love making people laugh. We've been talking about some serious subject matter on the show, and we've also been having a good time. But there's something about my ADHD that throughout my life has allowed me to harness the ability to just have a little joke here and there, or make people laugh in the middle of a stressful meeting. And it's just so important. It's probably one of the things that I value most in, for myself and in other people is let's laugh. Let's have fun.
Absolutely. I always know that if I'm feeling angsty about something, if I'm feeling like, I don't want to be part of this, I don't want to be with this group, I don't want to do this project with this person, it is always because there's a lack of humor.
Yeah.
And this inability to laugh at themselves, right?
Totally.
And I can't even be in that environment. I can literally walk in and feel it.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Because it's a drag, and then it's boring, and we need to enjoy ourselves as women with ADHD to really be our best selves.
Absolutely. It's not fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So Laura, are you working on something that you want to tell us about?
Well, I would love to share. First of all, I would love for folks to check out ADHD AHA. Go to wherever you listen to your podcasts and type in ADHD AHA, or you can go to u.org/ADHD AHA. You can check out all of our other podcasts at Understood as well. But I would just ask the listeners of your show to be on the lookout for some really cool resources that we're starting to develop specifically for women with ADHD. I don't want to share too much about it, but you can go to understood.org and sign up for our newsletter so that you're informed when these wonderful resources get released. But women with ADHD, we've primarily been a parenting organization for over a decade, and we are really excited to start to better serve the caregivers who are serving those children.
Absolutely.
And the non-caregivers as well. I mean, women with ADHD in general. Yeah.
And they can find that at understood.org?
At understood.org. They won't find it yet, but I will say sign up for a newsletter so that you can stay informed.
In about how long will these come out?
I'd say in the summertime.
Perfect. Okay.
Yes.
Sounds wonderful. Laura, thank you so much for spending time with us here today. It was a pleasure to talk to you again.
Same, Tracy. It's so much fun, and it's always so enlightening to chat with you. You have such great energy. I hope that, you get lots of relaxation and downtime after you give so much to everybody else.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's what I have for you for this week. If you like this episode with Laura, please let us know by leaving a review. Our goal is to change the conversation around ADHD, helping as many women as we possibly can learn how their ADHD brains work so that they too may discover their amazing strengths. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you here next week.